A man stands in his bedroom in the morning, lifts one foot to pull on a sock, and for a moment he sways. Nothing dramatic, a small correction, a hand reaching for the dresser that was not needed a few years ago. He puts it down to getting older, to legs that are not as strong as they were, to an inner ear that has lost a step. And he is partly right. But the thing that swayed, and the thing that quietly caught him, was mostly neither his legs nor his ears. It was his feet, or rather, the silence where his feet used to speak. Most people think of balance as something done by the muscles and the inner ear. The legs hold you up, the inner ear tells you which way is down. Both are real and both matter. But standing steady on one foot is not mainly a strength problem, and it is not mainly an ear problem. It is a reading problem. Every fraction of a second, the sole of the foot measures the ground beneath it, where the weight is sitting, which way it is beginning to drift, how the pressure is shifting from the heel to the ball to the edge, and sends that report up to the brain, which answers with a constant stream of tiny muscular corrections you never feel happening. And the instrument doing that measuring is far denser than people imagine. The sole of a single foot carries on the order of 200,000 nerve endings, a sheet of sensors packed into the skin you stand on, reporting upward through the whole of your waking life. 2 feet, then, make up one of the most finely wired sensory surfaces the body owns, rivaling the hands. The question this raises is the one the rest follows from. If the feet are wired that richly, why does the reading start to fail with age? The answer is not that the wiring wore out. It is that for most of a lifetime, it was quietly told to stay silent. To see what goes silent, look first at what the foot is actually saying when it is allowed to speak. The skin of the sole is not one kind of sensor, but 4, each tuned to a different feature of the ground. There are receptors that report steady pressure and the edges of whatever you are standing on, the round of a pebble, the lip of a stair, the seam where one floor surface meets another. There are receptors that fire at the first hint of slip, the light, fast touch that registers the foot beginning to slide a heartbeat before you could ever see it happen. There are receptors set deeper in the tissue that read vibration, the fine buzz of texture as your weight rolls across the skin and the surface drags beneath it. And there are receptors that read stretch, the pull of the skin itself as the foot flattens and deforms and the load travels from heel to toe. Put together, they do not hand the brain a single number. They hand it a moving picture, a live, detailed image of the contact between your body and the earth, refreshed many times a second. Remotion, fact card title. The sole reads: line, pressure and edges, slip, vibration, line, skin stretch, a moving map of the ground. Pause, lower third, der 5s. We know this in fine detail because researchers learned to listen to single nerve fibers in the living human body, using a technique called microneurography, a fine electrode placed into a nerve, picking up the traffic from one sensor at a time. The Swedish physiologists Åke Vallbo and Roland Johansson recorded the individual mechanoreceptors of human skin and mapped exactly what each type responds to and how fast it fires. Their work turned the sense of touch from a vague idea into a measured catalogue of specific instruments. And in 1998, the French researchers Anne Kavounoudias, Régine Roll and Jean-Pierre Roll showed something even more telling about the foot in particular. When they applied gentle pressure and vibration to different parts of the sole of a standing person, the whole body swayed in response, and the direction of the sway depended precisely on which patch of the sole they stimulated. The body behaved as though the feet were steering balance directly. They called the plantar sole a dynamometric map, a pressure map that the brain reads, in their words, for the control of human balance. The foot is not a passive stand the body is propped on. It is a sensing surface the brain steers by. Remotion, counterlabel, plantar sole. A dynamometric map, Kavounoudias, Roll and Roll, 1998. From 0 to Amam1 prefix, Possar upper third, Dieu 4s. Now follow the loop because its speed is the whole point. The receptors in the sole detect a drift, the weight sliding a few millimeters toward the outer edge of the foot. That signal travels up the leg to the spinal cord and the brain, and an answer comes straight back down to the muscles of the ankle and lower leg, which tense and adjust to pull the weight back towards center before it can become a fall. All of this happens faster than you can think, below the level of awareness, many times every second, the entire time you are upright. You experience it as simply standing still. What is actually happening is a continuous conversation between the floor and the brain, carried on the sense of touch in the skin of the sole. And standing still is the sound of that conversation going well. And like every sense, this one is mapped in the brain. There is a region of the cortex devoted to sensation from the foot, and like all such maps, it is kept sharp only by use. The more varied and detailed the signal arriving from the sole, the richer and more precise the map remains. Feed it a constant stream of fine information, and it stays vivid. Starve it, feed it the same muffled, featureless signal year after year, and it does what any unused faculty does. It fades. Not from injury, not from age alone, from silence. Set 2 feet side by side, a foot reading the ground directly and a foot reading it through half an inch of foam. The difference between them is not comfort, it is information. Take the bare foot first, the foot the sensors were built for. Walk barefoot across a varied floor, cool tile, then a soft rug, then grass, then loose gravel, and the sole lights up. Every texture is a different signal. Every pebble and slope and edge and change of surface is reported in detail. The weight rolls from heel to toe, and the skin reads each separate phase of the step. All 4 kinds of receptor are firing at once, all the time, sending the brain a torrent of specific, constantly changing information about exactly where and how the body is meeting the earth. The cortical map of the foot stays vivid because it is being painted, moment by moment, with fresh detail. This is the condition the human foot spent its entire evolutionary history in, bare against the ground, reading it surface by surface, step after step, for as long as there have been people to stand up. Watch a young child who has not yet been put in stiff shoes, and you can see the design at work. The toes splay and grip, the foot wraps and adapts to whatever it lands on, and the whole sole is busy gathering information with every step. That is the foot operating as it was built to, as a sense organ first and a support second. Now put that same foot inside a typical modern shoe, a thick, soft, cushioned midsole, a stiff sole that barely bends, a snug toe box that holds the foot still. The ground no longer reaches the skin. The cushioning absorbs the texture before it arrives. The stiffness flattens the edges and the slopes. The snug fit stops the foot from spreading and gripping. Every surface, tile, grass, gravel, stone, comes through to the sole as the same smooth, muffled press. The receptors that fire on slip and edge and vibration now have almost nothing to report, because the foam has already smoothed the entire world into a single uniform sensation before it ever reaches them. The foot is still there. It is simply no longer being allowed to feel. Remotion, call-out, text. The midsole smooths every surface into one muffled signal. Pose, upper third, der 5s. This is not a guess about comfort. It has been measured directly. The researcher Stephen Robbins and his colleagues, studying footwear and balance, found that thick, soft midsoles, the very cushioning sold as protective and supportive, actually degrade balance and the foot's sense of its own position, precisely because they insert a soft, deformable layer between the sole and the ground and blur the feedback the brain depends on. In their tests, the softer and thicker the sole, the worse a person's stability, and the poorer their awareness of where their foot was. Thin, firm soles let people feel the ground and stay steadier. Thick, plush ones did the opposite. The shoe trades away information for cushioning, and the brain pays for that cushioning in a fuzzier, less reliable map of the floor. So the real contrast is not between barefoot and shod as a matter of style. It is between a sense that is used and a sense that is muted. A bare foot on varied ground keeps the channel wide open and the map sharp. A foot held all day inside a cushioned, rigid shoe sends the same flat signal no matter what it stands on, and the map, with nothing fresh to keep it sharp, slowly goes dim. Shoes do more than protect the foot. They edit what the foot is allowed to feel, and the brain can only build its picture of the ground out of what the foot is allowed to feel. For most of a life, the muffling stays invisible. The map is dim, but balance has enough reserve elsewhere. Strong legs, fast reflexes, a young and accurate inner ear, that no one notices the foot has gone quiet. After about 50, three things change together, and the long silence finally begins to show. The first is that the receptors themselves decline. With age, the density and the sensitivity of the mechanoreceptors in the sole fall. It takes a larger stimulus to register the same touch that a younger foot would have caught easily. The instrument that was already being underused for decades now grows genuinely harder of hearing. Studies of older adults find that those with reduced sensation in the soles of their feet sway more when they stand, recover more slowly when they are nudged or stumble, and fall more often than those whose feet still read the ground well. The foot's sense of the floor turns out to be one of the better predictors of who keeps their balance into old age, better in some measures than leg strength alone. And the loss is easy to misread because it gets blamed on everything except the feet. On weak legs, on dizziness, on simply being old. The feet are rarely suspected, in part because nothing about them hurts. A sense does not ache when it goes quiet. It just reports a little less, and a little less, until one day the report is too faint to keep you upright over an uneven step. Remotion, counter-label. Poor plantar sensation, measurably higher fall risk, from 0 to 51 prefix, pos, lower third, der fours. The second is the faded map. Decades of the same muffled signal have already left the cortical representation of the foot dim and imprecise, not from age, but from disuse layered on top of age. So just at the moment the body most needs a sharp, detailed reading of the ground, it is working from a map that was allowed to blur long ago when it could still have been kept sharp at no cost. The reserve that hid the problem at 30 is gone, and the underlying poverty of the signal, the years of muting, is finally exposed for what it is. The third is speed. The whole balance loop, sole to spinal cord to muscle and back, slows with age. The correction that used to arrive in time now arrives a fraction of a second late, and a fraction of a second late is exactly the difference between a stumble that is quietly recovered and a stumble that becomes a fall. Put the three together and the picture is plain. A quieter instrument feeding a dimmer map, answered by a slower reflex. And the stakes are not abstract. A fall after 70 is one of the most serious events a body can suffer. A broken hip, a hospital stay, a sharp turn in the whole arc of later life. And the chain that ends in that fall very often begins years earlier, in feet that were never allowed to keep their reading sharp. If the problem is a sensory channel that went quiet from disuse, then the fix follows directly from it. Give the channel something to carry again, every day, and make the brain use the map it let fade. None of this is exotic, and none of it costs anything. It is simply letting the foot do the work it was built to do on purpose, after years of being prevented from doing it. Start with bare feet on varied ground, a few minutes a day. At home, walk barefoot across whatever surfaces you safely can. The bare floor, a rug, a textured doormat, a threshold. And pay deliberate attention to the differences underfoot. Because attention is part of what wakes the map back up. When the weather and the ground allow, take it outside onto grass, sand, or smooth stone, where the texture is richer and more varied still. 10 or 15 minutes a day of the sole actually reading the ground sends the brain exactly the kind of detailed, changing signal it has been starved of, and the receptors and their map respond the way any sense does to use. They begin to sharpen. The foot starts slowly to feel again. Remotion, bar chart, title. Signal to the brain. Bar 1 label. Cushioned shoe. Bar 1 value. 20. Bar 2 label. Barefoot, varied ground. Bar 2 value, 100. Positio center, der 5s. Then train the balance loop itself directly. Stand on one foot, near a counter or a wall you can reach out and touch if you need it, and simply hold the position, letting the foot make its constant small corrections underneath you. When that grows easy, do it with your eyes closed, which takes vision out of the equation and forces the brain to balance on the foot signal alone, with no way to cheat by watching the room. This is the most direct way there is to make the cortex pick up the plantar map and use it again. And most people find that 30 seconds to a side, a couple of times a day, produces a noticeable steadiness within a week or two. You are not building muscle when you do this. You are reopening a line of communication that was left to go quiet. If a single foot feels too unsteady at first, begin with both feet close together on a soft, uneven surface. A folded towel, a cushion, which already forces the sole to work harder than a flat floor does, and progress to one foot as the steadiness comes. The point is not difficulty for its own sake. The point is to give the soul something it has to read, and the brain a reason to listen. Then stop muffling the channel for the rest of the day. You do not have to throw your shoes away, but you can choose shoes that let the foot feel and move. A thinner, firmer sole that actually bends with the foot. A wider toe box that lets the toes spread and grip. Less cushioning sitting between the skin and the world. If you have spent decades in stiff, thickly cushioned, narrow shoes, make the change gradually, over weeks rather than days, because feet and ankles and calves that have been held still and supported for years need time to wake up and take the load again. Too much too soon invites a strain or a sore tendon. And spend more of your indoor hours barefoot, where the floor can reach the skin for free all day long. One honest caveat belongs here, and it matters. If you have diabetes, nerve damage, numbness, or any loss of sensation in your feet, this advice does not apply to you in the same way. A foot that cannot feel cannot be trusted to protect itself from a cut, a splinter, or a stone it never registered, and going barefoot can be genuinely dangerous rather than helpful. For those feet, the reading is impaired for a medical reason, and the right response is a doctor and proper protective footwear, not bare ground. For everyone else, though, the channel is intact. It has only been kept quiet. The whole protocol is really one idea applied three ways. Let the foot feel varied ground, make the brain balance on what it feels, and stop wrapping the foot all day in something that erases the signal before it arrives. The first steadier morning can come within days. Keep it up, and the brain slowly redraws a map it had been allowed to let go dim. The small sway while pulling on a sock feels like the body wearing out. Weaker legs, a worse ear, age simply doing what age does. Some of that is real and worth respecting, but underneath it is something simpler and far more fixable. A sense that was kept quiet for so long that the brain very nearly stopped listening for it. The floor has been talking the entire time. Every single step of your life, the soul has been reading the ground and reporting it upward, faithfully, whether or not anything was listening at the other end. The cushioned, rigid shoe did not silence the foot by damaging it or wearing it out. It silenced the foot by smoothing the whole world into a single flat note, held for decades until the map that should have stayed vivid went dim from having nothing left to read. That is why this is not really a story about aging, and not really a story about shoes either. It is a story about a channel, one of the richest the body owns, 200,000 sensors to a foot, wired straight into the control of balance. That was simply turned down year after year after year, until one morning it could no longer be heard over a stumble. And a channel that was only turned down and never broken is a channel that can be turned back up. You will not feel the map redraw itself. It happens below awareness, the way it always did, in the quiet traffic between the soul and the brain. You will only notice the result, that you stand on one foot to pull on a sock without reaching for the dresser, that the curb in the dark no longer takes you by surprise, that the ground beneath you feels, once again, like something you are reading rather than something you are merely standing on top of. The feet were never the problem. They were waiting the whole time for permission to feel.